everybody. Let's start off by reviewing our benchmark units for length. You know that a paper clip is approximately an inch in width. You know that a credit card is approximately a millimeter thick. You know that a paper is approximately a foot wide. You also know that a piece of chalk is approximately a centimeter in width, not in length, but in width. A piece of chalk is only about a centimeter wide. You also know that a baseball bat is about a yard or a meter approximately, and the width of our fingernail would be also about a centimeter. That should sound familiar to you. Those are good benchmarks you can use for estimating length. So when we are converting between metric units of length, there are some particular steps you will need to take. At this time, you need to check your notebook to make sure you have glued in your notes that have the steps you will need to follow to convert between metric units. So check that you have both pages of notes glued into your notebook and a pencil ready to write. This is a chart that you can use to help yourself convert and basically travel between units within the metric system. Here we have our basic unit. When we're measuring length, it is meter within the metric system. Meter, metric, pretty easy to remember. So you know that we can have a kilometer, we can also have a hectometer, we can have a decameter. We have our meter, we have a decimeter, a centimeter, and a millimeter. In 5th grade, we're only going to work between centimeter, millimeter, meter, and kilometer, so you don't need to worry about hectometer, decameter, or decimeter. Now, one way that you can remember this order is by saying to yourself, King Henry died unexpectedly drinking chocolate milk. The reason I have Monday here is because the unexpectedly, the U in unexpectedly, helps me remember that I'm talking about unit. When I'm measuring length, my Monday helps me remember that it's meters. So for length, I can say King Henry died Monday drinking chocolate milk. If you just remember unexpectedly, you should be okay though, either way. Now we know meter is our basic unit. We're working from 1 meter. Within 1 meter, I have 10 decimeters, I have 100 centimeters in a meter, and I have 1,000,000 millimeters in 1 meter. 1,000 meters make up 1 kilometer. So King Henry is going to help us remember how easy it is to convert between unit metric length. So here's the problem I'm going to model for you. How many centimeters are in 20 and 5/10 kilometers, or 20.5 kilometers? How many centimeters are within that? So following my steps, my first step would be for me to set up the problem. I know that I am talking about 20.5 kilometers, and I'm trying to figure out how many centimeters I have. So I'm going to get my pen, and I'm going to just write this down. Anything that I write, you are going to need to write also. I have 20.5 kilometers, and I need to know how many centimeters are in my 20.5. So for my third step, you have your chart set up for you also. You need to put a star where you're starting. Get it? Star for starting. Haha, yeah, so clever. Then you need to put an X where you're going to go. So I'm going to be traveling from kilometers to centimeters. Your fourth step is to underline and count the steps that you would need to take between the star and your end point. So 1 steps, 2 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps, 5 steps. Just like this. Now that you've underlined your steps, you're going to need to rewrite your number and move your decimal in the same amount of spaces in the same direction. So I have extra zeros to fill my place value because I'm going to have to move my decimal 5 spots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm moving my decimal to the right because I'm counted from my star to the X in the right direction. So I'll rewrite my number. Remember, anything that I'm writing, you should be writing also. And then I'll fill in my commas. So there are 2,050,000 centimeters in 20.5 kilometers. Again, putting my zeros into the empty space. And always remembering my units, centimeters. Now we should think about this because just to be sure, 2,050,000 centimeters inside of 20.5 kilometers. That makes sense. And the reason that that makes sense is because kilometers are really, really long and centimeters are really, really short. And so it makes sense that I would have many, many, like millions of centimeters inside of kilometers, because the shorter they are, the more of them we need to make up the same amount of space. So it does make sense for me to say that 20.5 kilometers is equal to that many centimeters. It makes a lot of sense. Let's try this again. 43 centimeters equals how many meters? So I'm going to write this. I've got my 43 centimeters. I'm writing what I know, and then I'm leaving the blank for what I need to find out, what I need to know. So I'm going to start by writing my chart. I've got my King Henry died unexpectedly drinking chocolate milk. I need to start at centimeters, so I put my star, and I need to end where my units are because that's where meters hangs out. King Henry died Monday drinking chocolate milk. My next step is for me to underline how many steps I need to take to get from my start to my end. So it took me 2 steps. My next step is for me to move my decimal back in the same direction. So my decimal will go from at the end of 43 to the left 2 spots. So I now know that there are 43 hundredths of a meter is equal to 43 centimeters. Remember where my decimal has to travel. He had to travel to the left this time. Now remember, this also makes a lot of sense because I'm going from a unit that's very small, centimeters, to a unit that's bigger. So 43 centimeters would make sense that it doesn't make up even half of a meter because a meter is longer than a centimeter. I know that there's 100 centimeters in 1 meter. So if I only have 43 centimeters, it's not going to equal a meter because I don't have 100 of them yet. Pretty similar to when I'm converting between fractions and decimals. If I have 43 hundredths, then it would equal 0.43 when you write it as a decimal. So you should do this on your paper with me. We're going to follow the same steps and you're going to do this with me. And you can pause to ask your teacher any questions whenever you need. If I'm starting at centimeters and I need to move to millimeters, how many steps do I need to go? 1 step. So I only need to move my decimal, which is at the end of 51, over 1 step. So what do I put in that blank? I have 510 millimeters is equal to 51 centimeters. Let's try another. If I'm going from meters and I'm moving to centimeters, then I'm going to need to go 2 steps. So I'll need to move my decimal 2 spots to the right. 1, 2. So I've got my 0 and my 0. Now let's think about both of these things. It makes sense because 51 centimeters are bigger than millimeters, so it makes sense that I'm going to have more millimeters because millimeters are smaller than my centimeters. So I'm going to have to use more of those millimeters to make up for the space that centimeters take up. So it makes sense 51 centimeters is equal to more millimeters. Same here, 70 meters is equal to more centimeters because centimeters are smaller than meters, and therefore you need more centimeters to cover the same amount of space that 70 meters would take up. If you have any questions right now, you can pause again to ask your teacher any questions. For this time, you're going to work on these 6 problems, and you can pause to do these with your teacher on a piece of paper or on the whiteboard so that you can get any help that you need. You can use this chart to help you or any of the notes that you have. You can click continue when you're ready to move on. You can also click pause and do these new problems with your teacher as well and ask her any questions that you might have. When you're ready, you can move on. This is the end of the lesson. You should listen to your teacher to follow any other directions that you'll need to complete during this math class.